A very good afternoon, Stats Raceland users and prospective users coming to you live from Saratoga, and very excited about tonight's webinar. We will focus on Arlington, where so many of the Stats Raceland angles and pace products and everything that you can use on Stats Raceland could come to bear on an absolutely spectacular Arlington Million card. They may have some trouble in Chicago, but not on Saturday. A fabulous, fabulous slate of action. And, of course, most of it on turf. There's some poly action, including the Bruce D. But for the most part, we will be excited about talking the Secretariat, the Bev D, the St. Ledger, the Million, and even the Pucker Up. And with me tonight, Craig Walker. Good evening.
Good evening, Steve. Glad to be back.
Good to have you back. And happened to walk into a conference room earlier today to do some handicapping, and I ran into Dave Siegel in town, and so many of the Equibase team and Jockey Club team on hand for the weekend for the roundtable, and it was good to meet him face to face. Look forward to doing the same thing with you, maybe Breeders' Cup week.
Yeah, Dave's out there for business and taking care of a lot of things. So he's busy each and every day out there. It's a lot of business stuff. So, and some of it tied to Stats Racelands. And the next week at QuestCon, there'll be some Stats Racelands presentations too that Ellis will be a part of. So everyone's looking forward to that.
Excellent. Maybe he'll go over to the Saratoga Raceway and hop in a sulky, perhaps. one of his other favorite activities. Let's turn our attention, Greg, and dive right in. And maybe it's good that the Secretariat is a 6-horse field to get things started and to kind of introduce what we can do with Racelands when it comes to these kinds of puzzles, because these races are invariably about comparing styles, comparing pace, looking at company lines and the kinds of quality of company that these horses have been keeping. There's a number of imports that are on the card, especially in the Million, and there is one in here, notably Permian, who will probably vie for favoritism with Oscar Performance.
Yeah, with those two listed 8-5 and 9-5 morning line, it probably is a toss-up between who will be the favorite. Just because people here know Oscar Performance more, I think maybe he'll probably end up being the slight favorite. But you can make a case for either horse.
The question of the pace comes into the picture right away, and start where you want in your discussion, but certainly, Oscar Performance has been going to the lead, and even though Brian Lynch has said repeatedly he's not a headstrong horse, he is a horse that has been making the lead. And, the mystery that you get sometimes when fields like this get together, you've got 3 Euros. Typically, we don't see Euros vie up on the front end, but what can we tell about this group and whether Oscar Performance is going to have much company besides Sonic Boom, perhaps, from Ian Wilkes?
Yeah, it looks like when I looked at the true odds, it does. Or if you're looking even in the PPs, when you see the run style of the horse. So right now, we're looking at Oscar Performance's past performances, the run style of early Oscar Performance is the only horse in the race that has that designation. One thing is when you have the Euro horses like Taj Mahal and Permian, that their style is still unknown, just because it's so hard to tell exactly where they're going to be without any type of fractional times on those races that they come from in Europe. I mean, you can read the comments and maybe get some idea, but I mean, it's very rare for any of those horses ever to be on the front end when they come here, and in my opinion, when you see them like really motoring, I mean, it's hard for them to do anything that first time here because they're just not used to that type of pace running so fast early. You know, they're used to holding back early and then it moving along. So in this race, I mean, just like the last race, I think Oscar Performance probably has a big advantage on being the horse that's gonna go to the lead. I have also some different angles on him, and when you create angles, for those who are new to race lens, the box to the right of the horse's name is where the angles will be when you're looking at past performances. So when I mouse over it, I get a brief synopsis of the angles that pertain to this horse today. And also, when you see that they're highlighted green, depending on you can set the parameters the way you like it, but those are positive angles. And whenever you see a red angle, that's a negative angle, and it's based on parameters that you set in the settings, and we can look at that a little bit later. But for Oscar Performance, when you want to go into detail about an angle, so the first one we see here is that I have an angle that I created for races at Arlington. So in turf routes, the horse that has the highest late pace rating often wins, and it's a profitable angle. So I'll click on the angle just so we can see the details. So this is the back testing that runs. Whenever you create an angle, you can back test it for up to the last year to see how it's been doing. So horses in these turf routes that have the highest late pace rating, there's been 92 starts and they win 30% of the time with a plus 26% ROI. So that's I mean, that's for angles that get 100, 200 types of starts. This is an extremely positive angle. It's hard to find angles as good as this, and so this is one that you would highlight often. I mean, any horse with that matches this angle is always going to be in my contenders in these turf routes at Arlington every single time. I mean, just without saying, no matter what they look like on form. The other thing that is a unique number we have here is the success score. So when I'm looking at angles, a success score of around 5 is average. The success score is something we work with the stats quantitative analysis team, and they came up with a way that uses the win, place, and show percentage, the number of starts, and the ROI, and it combines that into one single number. So you kind of have a feeling of when the angles are positive, at least you kind of know the strength of it. So anything 7 and above is something you can feel pretty good about, that's gonna hold up well. So then just if I go back to the PPs, all you would click on is up here in the breadcrumbs. I click back on PP, and that brings me right back to Oscar Performance. So the other angle that he had was for Brian Lunch using Jose Ortiz. So they have a look at that angle real quick. They've only have 19 starts together, but they've won 37% of the time. So that's high win percent, very high ROI. But with the smaller sample sizes, it can happen that way. So that's positive there as well. And then also, as I said, he's the only front runner in the race. And when we go to look at the true odds quickly, when I sort by the adjusted true odds, that you're looking for a lot of times the horses that are highlighted in yellow. So that just means that their adjusted true odds are lower than the morning line odds. And so when the live odds come in, that'll replace the morning line odds as far as how these numbers get compared. So if Oscar Performance is going off at 6-5 or higher, he's a good bet. And so the second horse I like that this brings up is a Fandom. So if I go look at his PPs, One of the things I like about this horse is that the last it's speed figures that we came up with a way to create speed figures for foreign races. So we have class ratings and speed ratings. The first race is a class rating, the second race is a speed rating, and those ratings compare exactly on the same scale as the Equibase speed figure. So this horse got a 112 for that Grade 2 race last time in France, and the class rating for today, when you compare these Equibase speed figures, you compare them to today's class rating, which is a 114. And so that's about the number, the Equibase speed figure we expect the winner to run. We have these algorithms that try to predict that. And so this horse fits in with this field. And so that's a big advantage that you have with Racelens, and is that when you have these horses that haven't raced in North America, at least you can kind of get a ballpark figure that'll tell you, oh, do they fit in with this group? And so this horse fits right in with that as well. And so that's why I like that horse.
Greg, expand on this a little bit, because I think, I guarantee that no matter what the level of expertise of some of the users, that interpreting international shippers is one of the trickiest portions of races like this. I mean, you already have got a pace factor to understand and to try to project, but then to really understand the quality of the international runners is very difficult, because they do not run, they are not trained the way a lot of even American turf runners are trained. The European style is to jog, and then dash the last quarter or 3/8. And it makes it very difficult to kind of understand who is going to necessarily quicken and where in past performances, really of any ilk, you can discern that.
Yeah, that is that's probably the part that is still hard to determine even when you have the numbers. So the numbers are a great starting point, and one thing that I do, like for Breeders' Cup, I do try to find as much video as I can on European horses or any foreign horse, and I just try to see if they have. I look for the ones that, like what you're talking about, that kind of quick turn of foot, the ones that seem like they can maneuver. Those horses seem to do better when they come to North America. And sometimes too, when you see horses that maybe had some talent and some potential and didn't quite fulfill it, then when you see them come to North America and they add the Lasix, a lot of times that's what those type of horses need. And so I expect them to maybe even improve their numbers a little bit from if their recent numbers had tailed off. A lot of times they can go back to their previous speed figures that you've seen before that maybe they did when they were earlier in their career. I look for those type of horses too. And then always you're just trying to look for the trainer. So if on number 3, if we click on trainer Mark Johnston, and so obviously, and this is that came up here, my defaults came up with a very precise set of filters. In the last 5 years, any horse off 8 to 30 days, it's a foreign shipper, it's a 3-year-old or older, no 2-year-olds, and it's a turf race. He's had no horses starting with that. If I just want to see what he's done the last 5 years, I hit modify. And when I reset everything, and I just hit apply, it's going to show what he's done in the last 5 years with any horse that he's brought to North America, and there's still no starters. So for me, since he has no experience, the way I handicap, I'm probably gonna take a wait and see attitude with this horse. Even though when you look, if I go back to the past performances, for this horse. I mean, you see these speed figures of 115, 113, 114, 114. It fits right in with. I mean, he should be a contender in this race. And just to me, because the trainers new at it, trying this, I would just kind of discount him a little bit, only for that reason. And it's nothing. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's the top trainer. We'll see some later on. It could be a top Euro trainer. If they're on a cold streak in America or haven't done well here lately, then I still kind of pass on those horses too. So that's just kind of the way that I look at any horse coming from a foreign country. Is there any horse you wanted to look at? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm a huge Oscar Performance fan, and especially after this Belmont Derby, you just get the sense that some of those issues going back to the beginning of the season, Brian Lynch, they've been well documented. Had a little bit of had a couple of hiccups getting him started on the year, and now it feels like he's in full swing. And I respect the Aidan O'Brien, and I do like the lightly raced Jean-Claude Roger that you like, but I'm fairly well committed to Oscar Performance myself. There's a lot to like heading into this. There's also a lot to like as we take a quick glance before we talk about the Bruce D, the race on the Poly that we're going to discuss. I got to tell everybody, a tremendous offer that is available through Sunday. And Stats Race Lens, if you're just getting introduced, a great opportunity for August, September, October. Given the timing, it'll take you right through the Breeders' Cup. $99 for these next 90 days. And this ends on Sunday. I want to make sure to let everybody know. Write down the code SRL, Stats Race Lens, quarter, Q, SRLQ, 99W. SRLQ, 99W, under $100, basically 100 days, and takes you right through Breeders' Cup. And of course, we'll have several seminars between now and, of course, Breeders' Cup week. So take advantage of this. If you've just been buying, bits and pieces and looking at the free race of the day, that kind of thing, this would be a chance to really open up the hood and get into the nuts and bolts and really have fun and utilize the tools that you're at your disposal. So SRLQ 99W, now through Breeders' Cup week, past Breeders' Cup, Stats Race Lens. So take advantage now. Let's talk about the Bruce D.
Yeah, so I start off with number 8, Uncontested. He's a 3-to-1 morning line. When we look at the True Odds module, when I always look at the adjusted True Odds, I mean, he's a standout. It has him listed as 6-to-5, with the next closest horses being 5-to-1 and 7-to-1. So the reason it's highlighted in yellow is because the morning line odds are 3-to-1. So they say anything at 6-to-5 or higher is he's worth a straight win bet. But the thing you want to do is when the races are about to run, you want to check again on this. You can use your Race Lens is designed to work on a mobile phone as well. So a lot of times that's what I do, is I just bring up on my phone the True Odds screen, and then when I see the top rated horse is highlighted in yellow, or some of the other horses, if they're worth it, I'm going to make a win bet on those types of horses. So it's always adjusting based on the betting that's going on. So it keeps you up to date right to the minute till the races start. So just to go back to the PPs. So I have a couple angles for this horse as well, Uncontested. So one of the angles is that another thing you can do is set up angles. What I do is for tracks I play a lot, I examine the running styles of the horses, and then I'll go through all the different types of running styles and then see which are positive, which are negative, and the neutral ones I just eliminate, but I leave the other ones in place. And so for Arlington and dirt routes, early run style is positive, and the run style is always right here on the labeled right here early. So it's been a positive 9% with horses that have an early run style. And then also the other angle here is Wayne Catalano with the dirt routes at Arlington. We can bring this one up. He only has, it's still another small number of starters, but still, when they have high win percentages, I like to play these types of angles. I mean, some people think you need, 25, 30 starts at minimum. Some people believe 50, 100. I'm always trying to get on the bandwagon early. So I just try to track lots of angles, look for them, and then I just track them. If they keep staying positive, I stay with them. And if it seems like they're going to turn the other way, then I get off. And that's just the way that I like to handicap, and RaceLens has a great way to do that. Other people can look for longer term angles, and RaceLens can be designed to do that too. So that's the great thing about RaceLens, is it's set up for all different types of handicapping. So let's go back to the PPs. The other horse that I liked in this race was the one that was ranked second when we looked, and that's number 4, Smokin' Glow. It was the second rated horse on the adjusted true odds. And this horse, one thing is it is projected to be on the lead. If we go look at the true odds, we'll go look right now. That one's not a positive angle, but still negative 3% for the return on investment. That's very good. I mean, if you were just betting randomly, the return on investment in thoroughbred racing right now is negative 25%. So anything that's close to break even is a positive angle for sure. So it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to bet it, but if you're trying to look for positive signs, it's a positive sign. And we can see right here that the 4s in the early part of the race is projected to be on the early lead. That's why we have it that way. The other good thing about about Smokin' Glow is that the horse is on a 4-race win streak, and so that's always a good sign when a horse keeps on winning, and has moved up the last 2 races to better types of races. So this horse can step up again, I think, and be right in this stakes race. And then the other horse I like in here, the last one, is Yorkton. And this horse has, we talked about the early run style, which is a positive factor. And then the other thing is, one of the things that you can look for up here for jockeys and trainers are the situational statistics. So they're things that are based on today. So this is how the trainer's done the last 30 days with today's jockey. You can always mouse over it. I'll tell you what it is. So today's distance surface is dirt routes. So this is going from turf to synthetic. So when you see lots of green, the defaults are set up that the green means it's highly above average. So highly above average win percentages and highly above average ROIs, that's always a good sign. So when you see lots of green up in here, then that's always a horse you should take a second look at. And oftentimes when it's this much positive situational stats going on, I mean, that horse is going to be somewhere in the mix in my wagering in the exotics or a key horse at times. Is there anyone you liked in this race?
I like Smokin' Glow as well, and I like the forward progress. He's gotten very good at 3, and I really you fold in the stretch out. Look at Becker stretching horses out, sprints to routes, and even though this is not a stretch out from 1 turn to 2, which probably is a big part of his stats. He's obviously good at gauging, stretching a horse out. He already, Smokin' Glow already stretched out once, going short in the 5.5 to the mile. I mean, all the things you said. To me, he's the now horse, and I love the fact that he sat last time and didn't have to have the lead. I just think he's going in the right direction, and I don't think this is an overly ambitious spot. I like the fact that Scott Becker is sort of spoon feeding. This may be a very good horse in the making, and instead of putting him in a graded stake, I think he's going to take his wins where he can with this horse. I think he's a very prime bet. He's going to be he's not going to be favored. I mean, certainly with Catman, with Catalano and the like, at best he's second choice.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So we want to move on to the 9th race.
Let's go. The American St. Ledger, and this is of course a little bit of a fish out of American waters. It is in terms of a mile and 11/16, not a distance we see too often. A 3-turn race here, and Mike Maker, certainly from the domestic side, this has become kind of a specialty for Maker, and whenever he shows up in these races, I always look carefully.
Yeah, and this time too, he has a 1-2 punch, so he is going to be tough to beat. So we'll look at number 2 first, to Glebe. Bet or don't quite live up to their odds, and that's why that's a negative angle. So that's could be a slight problem. But when we go to true odds and look at the race projection, it doesn't have him. It's using pace figures, so it doesn't have him near the back of the pack. So when they're within a few lengths like that, I don't worry about the run style as much, because it's not going to be at as big a disadvantage as it normally would be. So that's kind of one way that I'm trying to compare run styles to how the race is going to play out, just to see what can happen there. So that's what's going on with that horse. When we look at the number 1 horse, which is the other horse that Mike Maker has, Keystone for Victory, and this horse is low odds as well. He's 5-2. This is another horse that his Equibase speed figures aren't as fast as to Glebe's, but it still looks like a strong contender. And this horse is when we look at the true odds, we can see that that these horses, that this horse rates the highest on true odds, and to Glebe is second on true odds. If we look at adjusted true odds, then the orders are reversed. So the true odds is based on the analysis that the stats quantitative analysis team came up with, that went through all these algorithms and is trying to predict how horses are going to perform. And so these horses are both kind of standouts as far as that goes in this race. The other horse that I like is the one that is ranked 3rd in here, Postulation. So when we look at that horse, that one thing that gets highlighted when you see the Equibase speed figure is in green and circled in green. That means that it's the highest Equibase speed figure that's showing in the past performances for all the horses in the race. So this horse ran a 116 last time, and then we always, like I say, compare it to the class rating of 114. So that horse, I mean, his figures were pretty steady in here, but he had a step up there. So it's always, you're trying to see, and it was at a mile and a half. So you're always trying to see if, well, maybe the light clicked on for this horse. So the types of horses I look for this usually are 3 and 4 year olds. But to me, when a gelding is 5 years old, I kind of treat them the same way as a 3 or 4 year old. That when I see an improvement in numbers, I'm expecting them to repeat that number. And so that's one of the reasons why I like postulation in this race as well. There's one long shot I like in this race, and that's the number 3, and that's Crewman. And the main reason I like it is I had created the angle. So when this trainer uses this jockey, they have a positive angle. But even if you didn't create the angle yet, when you look over here where it says with jockey, that's how this trainer does with this jockey, you still see the same thing. It's the 26% win percent and the 133% ROI. So those are strong numbers out of 27 starts. So that's the kind of tandem that I put in as an angle, because I just want to keep seeing how hot they can stay for how long, and I'm going to keep that as a positive sign and use those types of horses all the time, and especially when it's a price. So this horse I'm going to put in with the other strong contenders to try to get more value out of this race and hit an exacta or a trifecta with this horse in the mix. Anything you want to look at, Steve? Yeah, go ahead.
Nah, honestly, I'm the wrong guy. When it comes to these races, I struggle terribly. And I mean, I'll root for Fearon McCubbin, who owns Bullard's Alley, who's a very prominent player and a big tournament player. And I'm a big fan of Gleishaw. I struggle when it comes to these marathons. I don't know what it is, but I end up always having to spread further than I need to, and it's a struggle.
Yeah. So just one thing, when you look at the numbers here, I mean that was a strong race that Bullard's Alley ran last time. The one negative, I guess that you could say for me anyway, is just that when you look at turf routes for last year, this trainer, he has a little, whenever it's 5% or lower, I'm just always kind of leery of that in a way. But he does have a positive ROI, so that means he can come in with price horses. So just when it's a 6-to-1 shot, I tend to maybe put that horse in the bottom of my exotics in the tries or something. But it's not a horse that I usually keep. But there are lots of things to like about it. That's just personal style of play, and that's why I'm doing that. But I mean, there's lots of things that you could point to point to this horse as a contender.
Let's turn our attention to the Beverly G, and there's an interesting storyline in here. I mean, besides a horse like Hawksmoor coming, continuing on for Arnaud Delacour and Leal, there's a guy like Peter Schergen invading with one of his German horses. This one actually a daughter of Dan Seeley, a little bit of a different circumstance. Usually Schergen shows up with the Monson family types and Scirocco types. This one a little bit different from a pedigree side. You've also got a horse in here, Indana Bruja, that is really a now horse that has really emerged 2 for 2 in North America after coming up from Argentina for Nacho Correas. And very interesting. And I'm anxious to hear your thoughts, Craig, and what you saw in the Bev D in terms of some of the angles.
Yeah, so this is there are lots of ways to commit this race. The one thing that we'll just go look at the true odds here. So the one thing that kind of influenced my thought process in this race was that with the race projection that it said it's analyzing the pace. So when we see that this class rating is a 115, this the commentary here for the pace says that the pace projects to be slow, and that means the advantage can go to the horses that'll be close to the early pace. So when we're looking at these pace figures, so 102.5 and 103.5. So when it's so much lower than the 115, normally in a route race, doesn't matter if it's a dirt route or a turf route, these pace figures are going to be about the same as the 115. The leaders are going to run 115 at these points of call, and then at the end, a horse will finish in 115. Just on average, normally, if you were going to average all the races that have a class rating of 115, on average the middle pace figure, that's what is here, and the early pace figure are going to be 115s in any type of route race. So since these numbers were so low, I kind of am gearing my thinking towards the horses that are going to be near the lead. So when we're looking at this here, there's 3 horses, the 9, 4, and 6, that because the 4's not too far back here, and then when we're looking on the middle of the turn, that kind of got my attention, and that's what I was going to look at first. And unless there was some other reason to not like those horses, I was going to stay with those horses. So when I look at number 9, Hawksmoor, you can see that there, like we talked about before, lots of highly above average 1% and highly above average ROIs for this trainer, and even for Leparoux, the jockey. So that's all positive. Also with horses that win their last race, you can see that that even though it's a negative number, that's still highly positive, because most of the time those types, it's hard for horses to repeat, and the ROI is usually much more negative than just the negative 4%. So all of that, and because it's going to be close to the slower pace, is one of the reasons that I really liked Hawksmoor a lot. The other horse, the one that you mentioned, the Donna Bruja, I mean, there's lots to like about this horse. Like you said, one of the things I like a lot is that, as you said, with all the winning this horse is doing, I mean, it's 10 for 12. When you look at the lifetime starts with 2 seconds, I mean, it's you really almost done nothing ever wrong ever. Never run a bad race. What I like is that the figures are improving again. So when you have these figures down here, part of it can be like what I had mentioned before to you, is that sometimes some of these horses will improve when they get Lasix, and you can see this horse got Lasix for start in North America, ran a 112, and then the second time it has Lasix, now it runs a 119, and we're looking at a 115 for this race. So that horse exploded past that number. So this horse looks like very strong to me. We had some other positive angles, that the what we talked about before, that angle with the highest late pace rating in Arlington turf routes. The trainer does very well at Arlington. We click on this trainer. you can see again out of 43 starts, he has a 28% win percent and a plus 103% ROI. The success score 9.1. I mean, those are big numbers. This trainer's winning a nice win percent with horses that pay. So those are very strong. And then the other horse that looked like the lead, that was going to be on the lead, and that I think can hang around for a piece of it, is this Zapesa. And this horse I just like mainly because it's 15-1, and it's going to be on the lead. When we looked at the true odds again, when we go back here, it was highlighted as a possible overlay. So, according to the adjusted true odds, 7-1 is a reasonable price on this horse. If you're getting 15-1, then this horse is one to throw in the exotics. I mean, some people will bet on those types of horses. It's just that whole thing just comes down to whatever your philosophy is on betting. I mean, I tend to, when I'm making straight bets, to bet horses that are I rank this on the adjusted true odds. So I'm usually going to bet the first, second, or third choice for my win bets. But if they're way out of line, so if the adjusted true odds are 7-1, and say this horse was going off 20-1, then I am going to put a straight bet on a horse like this. And so, like I said, I just have, when I'm at the track, I just have my phone, and I'm just looking at these, with a few minutes to post, and seeing, is there something to bet there? A lot of times what I do is, if I have a strong favorite, so like if a horse on the adjusted true odds was 6-5 and the next closest horse was 5-1, 6-1, any of the horses that are highlighted, like with a couple minutes to post, I'll box exactas with my key horse to those horses, and that's just a kind of a simple way to play. Even if I didn't have those horses as contenders, I'm just gonna play that because I'm looking for value, and those are bets that I do. I mean, it's when I'm doing it that way, they're just like automatic bets for me in that way. So that's one of the ways that I use Racelands. Were there any horses you wanted to look at?
You covered the major players. I do respect Zapesa, and I find that she ends up on a lot of tickets whenever she's in a race that I'm playing. You're dealing with some very heavily bet types in here. Chad Brown, of course, and Maker. I would give a long look to Chris Block in here with his Illinois bred. Here's another Illinois bred for Saturday. Prado Sweet Ride. Carlos Marquez does a great job of saving ground. That counts in a race like this. And she hung around and was within a length of Donna Bruja in the Modesty. And I don't see what exactly prevents her from potentially hanging on, even if it's just for third or fourth, and igniting up your triple and your super. I would include Prado Sweet Ride at the bottom of the ticket.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense finishing just a length back of Donna Bruja last time, and that was, like we said, we know that was a 119 that Donna Bruja scored, and this horse scored a 117.
We got about 15 minutes, and the Arlington Million certainly is going to deservedly take up the lion's share of that, Craig. And this is one of the great races in American racing. And in fact, today I had Jose Santos on the show. We had a wonderful 45-minute conversation that included him talking about Star of Cozine and Steinlen winning the Arlington Million, and how important it was to him in his Hall of Fame career. This is really an outstanding cap for this Arlington Million, and you have everything that you like that has made this race interesting over the years, including the imports. Let's dive in and start wherever you feel appropriate.
Yeah, there were, for me, there are there are two horses that I'm gonna key on top in this race, and that's Beach Patrol and McTall, and we'll just take a look at Beach Patrol first. So this is a Chad Brown trainee. One of the things I like about it is just when I looked at the true odds.
Excuse me.
This horse was the top-ranked horse, and is highlighted as a potential overlay. So that was the first thing I liked about the horse. Also, that it showed it in control of the lead on the turns. So I mean, I'm hoping that the one thing is when you're looking at the early pace here, I mean, there is always a worry when you see some of these horses on the outside that there's a possibility of them getting hung out wide. I mean, that's always a danger on these kind of turf route races. I mean, sometimes when it's a much longer race, I mean, the field can tend to get strung out more. So I'm hoping that the horse gets good position, but especially when it shows that it has a chance to get the lead in the middle, then I'm not quite as worried, because I think the horse will be able to get position, and that's the other thing I worry about with McTall as well. And so those are the things that kind of are the only worrisome part for me with these two horses. But other than that, I mean, I really like both of them. When I go to the PPs, I mean, Chad Brown is on turf is always outstanding. We know that, especially in the bigger races, when the grade ones are on the line. I mean, his horses are going to be in peak condition. So this horse, I think it's back on the improve. I mean, it was running well here. You can see the Equibase speed figures of 114, 117. They took a break between February and waited till May, and you can see that they had the two races of just 106. This was kind of one paced in this race, but then you come back in the United Nations, and the horse, like you see here, that it was a long duel, dug in gamely in the stretch. I mean, that was a tough race. I just think that horse is gonna move up again off that race. So I'm expecting this horse to run back into the 116, 117 range, and I'm hoping that it's good enough. I mean, the class rating is 119, so it's hard to tell what's going to happen. But this is just a highly competitive field. It's with the 13 horses in this race, and so everyone's going to have their pluses and minuses. But this is one of the horses I like, because I'm hoping Joel Rosario can carve out a trip from that 10 hole and get position there, heading for the home stretch. McTall, I mean, the reason that this horse is a standout is because of what we talked about before, the races that it's ran overseas. I mean, you see the ratings of 120, 119, 116. There's another 119, 121 back in 2016. So this horse is in the 119, 120 range, and that's those, when you start getting into those numbers and getting in the low 120s. I mean, those are the types of horses that are going to participate in some of the Breeders' Cup races. So this looks like a strong horse, and I like that that Frankie Dettori is riding as well. So those are the positive signs I have with this horse. I mean, I'm hoping with his experience with American racing, he's going to be able to carve out a trip for this horse. But this horse, definitely on this speed figures looks very strong running those Grade 1 races there. My kind of top long shot I like in this race is the Cassequis. We talked about this trainer before having the strong numbers at Arlington. This horse also has that angle that we've talked about in numerous races so far with the highest late pace rating. Just to show where that pace rating is it's a projection for today's race. So this is an algorithm that the stats team came up with, and it's this column here always. It's called late pace. So when you sort by it, you can see that the Cassequis with the 124, and then you can see the other horses that rank, how they rank on late pace. Of course, because there's no times for the foreign runners, there's no way to know exactly. There's no way to come up with a rating for that. So that's why, unfortunately, we don't have those numbers there. But you just have to try to use other analysis to see how they're going to close. But because of that, the S is the sustained run style. This is another place where you can see the run styles, where we've talked about the run styles in the PPs. The other place is right here in the run style column. And when you mouse over it, if you forget what each letter means, it's just early or sustained or presser. And the early horses that will be on or near the lead. Pressers are the stalker type horses, a few lengths off the lead, and the sustained horses tend to be 5 lengths or more back at the start of the race at the first call. A couple other long shots I liked, just to throw in to mention before we go over some of your horses, were the number 12, Ascend. And one reason I like this horse is just because Graham Motion and Jose Ortiz have, a strong winning combination of 19% with a plus 49% ROI. And I like Jose Ortiz in these big type of races. And then the other horse that was a super long shot was Ghost Hunter. It's listed at 30 to 1. One thing I liked about this horse is that it did run a 118 Equibase speed figure in the last race. I mean, the only thing with this one is where I don't know if it can repeat it, is because this is a 7-year-old gelding, and so when you start looking at that, it kind of, it's hard to see horses like that to stay with that improvement. Like, there could be a bounce factor involved. It could have just been a one-hit wonder. So, but the thing is, when you get 30 to 1, then you can still take a chance on it. If you're only getting, 4 or 5 to 1, then you have to be leery. So, I mean, throwing it in the exotics is definitely worth a shot with a horse like this. What horses did you want to take a look at, Steve?
Well, Deauville, and there's, if you go back to last year's Arlington Million with Deauville, here he was, facing elders at a remarkable time. I mean, in America, it's rare that we put 3-year-olds in at this time of year against elders. Baffert does it very cleverly, and of course, Arrogate last year faced elders in an allowance race, and then back to facing 3-year-olds exclusively in the Travers. Deauville wins the Belmont Derby, then is outposted 11 of 11 last year in the Arlington Million, and Seamus Heffernan may have struck the lead a little too early. He look at who he's run against. I mean, Ribchester is arguably, you go back to the Queen Anne at Royal Ascot, and Ribchester's arguably one of the top 3 horses in the world. When it comes to this Arlington Million, I invariably, and also the races up at the Woodbine in the fall, I just acquiesce to the kinds of horses these Euro imports have been facing and what the horses they face would be in this race. Ribchester, would be 4 to 5 in here. A horse like Highland Reel, who Scottish lost to by 3 lengths in the Prince of Wales, he'd be 4 to 5 in here. That's what I want. And so DeVille and Scottish, I'm going to fold them in with Kasaki, actually, and with Beach Patrol. Beach Patrol has, you go back to last year in the Secretariat, he was terrific, and he is actually rating a lot better than he ever has before. So I want Kasaki and Beach Patrol mixed in with the 2 best Euros, and that's how I'm approaching it.
Right. So just one. So we'll look at DeVille real quick again. So I totally agree. Like when you look at the Ribchester race, you can see that DeVille got a 122 out of that race. So your analysis is spot on. It's in our ratings, because we say a 119 is all it takes to win. The only thing that gives me pause is you can see that with Ryan Moore, Aidan O'Brien. So last year they're 0 for 8. They just have a show. When you click on Aidan O'Brien, we're just going to look real quick. We're just going to reset everything. And we just look at the last year. So this is just for his, we know he's a great trainer. This is just for his North American starters. Oh, that one didn't work. Sorry. I didn't, I thought I reset it. Hold on. Let's try it again. I think I didn't hit apply. Well, I don't know. For some reason, it's not changing it right now. Well, the thing is, though, you have to take my word for it. I don't know why this isn't working right now. But he's only 1 for 21 this year with his North American starters, Aidan O'Brien, and so it's not to say anything against him. I mean, he's a world-class trainer, one of the top trainers in the whole world. But just for right now, lately, and last year, it could just be all bad luck. His horses aren't winning in North America, and so that's just the reason why I, especially on top, it just makes it hard for me to play it. Even though I totally agree with you that he's been running against the best horses and did so well last year in the race, and there's really no other reason to not think that the horse will run well. So that was just the one thing for me that just when it's that drastic, 1 for 21, it makes me take a stand against the horse in some form.
No, I understand.
I get it. And so that's what's going on there. But like you say, I mean, as almost every year, I mean, the Arlington Million, I mean, it's been a fantastic race, from day one, and it continues to be, and I'm glad that the race has stayed. Even though a million isn't what it used to be, I mean, it's still just a tremendous race, and all the races really built around this. All these turf races are highly competitive. So we still have just one last race to look at. Before we look at that race, do you want to just mention those special pricing we have again real quick?
I will, actually. The $99 quarterly subscription, really a tremendous deal, and a perfect timing. You get the second half of Saratoga and Del Mar. You get all of the great action for the fall back at Santa Anita and Keeneland and Belmont, and it all leads right up to the Breeders' Cup. And we'll be working with you all through the late summer and into fall and up to Breeders' Cup 2 and beyond. But $99, and all you do is use the code SRLQ99W. SRLQ99W, $99, tremendous basically $1 a day is what it amounts to. And really encourage, if you've been indecisive about subscribing, this is the opportunity. And the more you utilize the product, the more you're going to win, and the more you're going to find and exploit aspects and angles, whether they're ones that come with the product or whether they're ones that you discover and that are some of your favorite angles that you bet. And of course, utilizing the system to mail you, one of the things that's remarkable is putting in your angle and then letting it tell you about spots where the angle is cropping up. And it's going to crop up at racetracks you never look at. You literally never look at. Indiana, Louisiana Downs, Emerald, whatever. And you can go to town, and you're gonna find betting spots, and you might find places to bet you never thought to look at before. So take advantage of this offer. SRLQ 99W, $99. Craig, I've got to pull up actually and send everybody out. If you don't mind wrapping up, we'll send it to you to close out with the pucker up.
Sure. I'm just going to quickly go over the contenders in that race. So thanks for hosting again.
Not at all. We'll see everybody in a few weeks. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you Travers Week.
So just in the for this last race, the Pucker Up Stakes, the key horse, as we talked about before, when a horse is has the lowest adjusted true odds of 5-2, and it's a clear choice over the other horses. I mean, these types of horses, unless they have some negative angles that I've come up with, they're always going to be strong keys for me on any race day, especially big race days. So number 4, Journey Home, is going to be my top pick in this race. When I go look at the PPs, this horse has a strong positive angle that I like, that we mentioned earlier with Grand Motion using Jose Ortiz. They have success together, are very profitable. The other thing is that I like is that this horse figures, when you're looking at the race projection, I kind of like where the horse is positioned. Like that looks like the when you have a good jockey like this, and when I see space when I'm looking at the projection, I think that this horse can carve out a nice trip. So I like everything about that horse, Journey Home. He's going to be a strong pick for me. The number 3, Lipstick City. One of the things I like about this horse is there's a Chad Brown angle that just comes up with the way I have my individual research angles programmed. This angle comes up. So this is over the last 5 years with horses that are their third race off a layoff, and they're a domestic shipper, and they're 3 years older on the turf. He has a 27% win percent with a plus 26% ROI. So earlier we've talked about a lot of these short-term angles. I mean, this is one that's a long-term angle. This is over the last 5 years with very specific specifications that is a positive sign that he has. So I like that horse a lot, Lipstick City at 4-1. When the other horse I like in this race, number 11, Canny. The reason I like this horse is because Journey Home is our key horse. This horse finished ahead behind Journey Home. So anytime a horse is listed at 15-1, 10-1 or higher, and he just raced behind the horse that you like as the key horse, I mean, you have to put that horse in the race. And then there's one other long shot that I'm going to throw in is this Princess La Quinta. And what I like is that the last 2 speed figures of 98 and 99 Equibase speed figures are an improvement over the previous races. It looks like the class rating of 101 says that the speed figure to win will probably be around a 101. So if this horse is on the improve, it's a 3-year-old filly. The improvement has been gradual here. Like it ran the 98 after the 95, came back with the 99. I can still see a little bit more improvement at 20-1. That's a horse that you have to throw in the exotics, in my opinion. So that covers it. I hope everyone has good luck on Saturday, and it's a great card. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.